Hello everyone, I'm Dhanushka Sandakalu, founder of Elseware Games. So this is the introductory session for Pedestrian AI System to discuss about its features and some of the implementations behind that. So in this session, we are going to cover the project structure behind Pedestrian AI System, the basic architecture of it and the underlying implementations behind that, and what are the core blueprints exist on the pedestrian AI system, as well as the components and subsystem implemented within it. So mainly we have 6 different subsystems, including pedestrian AI system, which is one of the core components. And in order to support the additional features provided by the pedestrian AI system, we have 5 different subsystems, namely locomotion system, weapon system, actor profile system, inventory system, and user interface system. So I will go through each of these stuffs at the demonstration, but just to get an idea, we have 6 different components inside our pedestrian AI system. Okay, so when you start your project, basically it would be look like this. So we have added some demo instances to showcase the capabilities of pedestrian AI system, as well as there is some city sample scene. Okay, so if I run this project, basically I'll start with default mannequin, but actually this locomotion system is driven by our own implementation. I'll show you how we implemented this locomotion system later on. But just to give an idea, you can move around the level, jump, as well as sprint. And there is a help panel. You can disable it by pressing a tab button. And yeah, that's almost it. And if you move towards to this sample city level, here you can see the pedestrians are moving. Also, they are carrying different items like a briefcase, mobile phone, and some of them are just moving. And also you can interact with the pedestrian as well. If you collide with the NPCs, they will do some interactions as well. Also, these pedestrian characters can interact with the world invokers, such as this traffic light. So here you can see when the traffic light is green, pedestrian can cross the road. Okay, so this is a very basic showcase of the pedestrian AI system, but let's dive deep in. Okay, so if I go to the project structure, basically inside the root folder we have set of different directories. So first we have this assets guideline, which basically signifies what are the plugins that we required to run this asset. So basically all you require is this animation warping plugin if you are using these default animations. But if you are going with your own locomotion system, maybe based on its requirements, these plugins may differ. But by default, you need to enable this animation warping plugin when you are running the asset. So you can go to the plugins and search animation warping, and here you can see the plugin is there. Right, so make sure it is enabled. Then you may be able to run the asset without any issues. Okay, and the second folder we have blueprints. Basically, this contain all the core logic of pedestrian AI system. We have some blueprints for buildings and our component structure, as well as some of the function libraries that we are going to use inside our project. And the game base, basically it contains the play controller, HUD, and the game mode. And we have defined set of interfaces to interact with multiple different blueprints. So we can check these stuffs as well. And we have a very important blueprint collection here, which is a navigation volume. And here we have the pedestrian invokers as well as spline cloud invokers. So in a different session, I will discuss about these navigation invokers, because this basically contain all the core logics behind our navigation logic of the NPC characters. And I have added some showcase helpers as well, such as a demo room and switcher panel, and spawners to spawn NPCs, as well as traffic lights to showcase some world effect invokers, like in here, right? So this is a traffic light. Okay, then we have a set of blueprints for the camera manager and some curve values. Also, for the character, we have a root character, which is known as BP character base, and by inheriting that, we have defined BP NPC base as well as BP player. And considering the NPC, it can extend further for pedestrians as well as spline crowds. Okay, and that's the characters. Also, if I go to the data layer, basically we have clearly defined what are the enumerations that we require, as well as structs, and by composing each of these enums and struct, we have defined set of data tables. So I'll go through each of these data tables when it comes to the subsystem, because these data tables will be used in those subsystems to provide some features. Okay, and as usual, this demo folder contains the Unreal specific default assets that we are going to use. So you can check these stuffs as well. And inside the effects folder, we have like character collision block react related effects, as well as death effects and hit reaction effects. And for the inputs, we are using enhanced input mappings. So there are input mapping context as well as the actions. And to visualize the assets or like the static inventory items carried by the NPCs, here we have defined the inventory blueprints as well. So if you go to the pickup items, basically this has set of items that can be picked by NPCs. So currently I have added pistol, rifle, as well as sword as well. But underlying the current implementations, these items may not be useful, but in a future release, we are planned to integrate these blueprints as well. And for the static items, as you've seen in the city sample showcase, these NPCs characters can be carried static items like backpacks, briefcase, a cup, phone, and maybe a purse as well. Okay, and going to the maps, basically we have two different maps to showcase the basic features of the project, as well as some crowd hit reaction related specific features as well. Inside the materials folder, we have set of predefined materials to implement our levels. And at the UI, basically we have a defined set of widget blueprints to implement our UI specific features. And again, we have separate directory for weapons, but due to the current implementation, as I said before, we are not going to use this stuff. But in the future release, we will integrate these stuffs as well. Okay, so that's the basic structure of pedestrian AI system. And yeah, and let's see the component and subsystem of pedestrian AI system as well. Okay, now let's see what we have in our components folder. And yeah, so basically inside our components folder, we have set of subsystems as well as our core component, which is BPC, Pedestrian AI System. So in order to explain this stuff, I will first open the character blueprint as well. And yeah, so this is the main character blueprint, and this will be inherited by our NPC base as well as play. Okay, but if you look at each of these characters, they all share these locomotion system, weapon system, actor profile system, and inventory system components. But for the NPC based character, it shares this BPC pedestrian AI system component as well, because this pedestrian AI system component is the one that we are going to drive the NPC logics behind our NPC characters. So we don't need to necessarily include that component inside BP player character, because it is controlled by the player. Therefore, it is not driven any sort of AI logics. Okay, so if I go to this pedestrian AI system component inside our components folder, basically you can configure this if you go to this setup category. Basically, first you can activate or deactivate NPC AI logics. Maybe just for the debugging purposes, sometimes you may need to isolate NPC characters. In such scenarios, basically you can toggle this active button. And consider the NPC state. The NPCs can have 4 different states. Either they can remain in idle, or they can roam within the bounding box, or they can reach to a nearby waypoint, or they can reach and follow a nearby spline path, or they can simply follow crowd spline, as we have seen in the city example. Right? So based on the state where your NPC want to act, you can simply toggle these values as well. And consider the movement options in order to vary their walking speeds and maybe the ROM acceptance radius. You can tweak these values as well. Also, sometimes the NPC characters will wait some idle amount of time before move again. So this idle time range signifies that feature. So you can simply tweak these values to get more randomness. And yeah, consider the debug options. This is just for the development purposes. You can simply debug the travel location of NPC characters, or the bounding radius of the ROM distances, or the targeted waypoint location, as well as the debug path locations as well. Okay, so basically once you include that component to the NPC character, all those configurations will be available here, like this. Okay, so that's the first component, one of the core components of the system that I want to discuss. And then we can look into BPC locomotion system component as well. So basically, in this component, we control the motion logics of our characters, uh, including both NPCs and play. Okay, and this component basically will refer a data table called anim set, and we have created two different data tables to drive the male animation as well as the female animations. So if you look into one of these data tables, you can see based on different types of animation state, we have clearly defined those records. So for example, by default, a character will remain in unarmed state. So in such a scenario, what is the idle animation that we have to play? What is the idle breaks that we are going to play? Likewise, we have to clearly define these animations. Yeah, but if you're going to use this asset in your project, you don't need to do those stuff manually because we have been already predefined it. But in case if you need to integrate your own animation to the locomotion system, then you can simply add a new record and add those values here. Right, and then that data table will be referred here, and in order to use a specific animation collection, you have to refer what is the anim set name. Basically, that's the raw name of this data table. Right, so for example, if I choose unarmed, then it will simply refer this record, and the animation blueprints will be driven by these animations. Right, and there are two rotation modes as well. Either you can strafe or forward facing. So based on the rotation mode, you can get specific rotation requirement of your game, especially when it comes to the pawn oriented characters. Okay, so that's the locomotion system. And if I move to the next subsystem, which is weapon system, basically you can add a set of default weapons that will be carried by player character or NPC character. But as I mentioned before, currently, due to the current implementation strategies that we follow, we have only released the weapon capabilities for the unarmed state only. Right, but if you go into this folder, we have already defined the required assets or required blueprints for the weapons, and in a later release we will integrate these features, so player or NPC characters will be use these weapons as well. Right, maybe a player character will be able to use a pistol and shoot NPC character, or NPC character can shoot towards a player as well. Right, and you can add those default weapons to this weapon array and simply use whatever specific weapon that you want by calling its index inside this default weapon slot. Okay, and then we can look into the next component, which is actor profile system. And this is a bit of a complex component that we have because we need to control the health level and damage effects of a specific character. So Inside the setup section, you can see we can simply configure what are the current health or max health of a specific character, as well as what are the hit effects, death effects, and the character collision block effects made by those characters. But it will be easy if I go to this maybe PPNPC base, and inside this actor profile system, here I have been already configured those specific effects. So here you can see there are three different blueprints that will drive that logic. For example, if I go to this PP effect character collision block react blueprint implementation, here you can see I have added the necessary montages that should play when a character hit with an NPC, or maybe NPCs collide with each other, right? Likewise, if you look into these death effects, again it has set of montages that should drive when a death effect occurs. So likewise, you can combine those different effects inside this actor profile system, which will give much more realistic and dynamic capabilities. Also, this player sense will be used to understand where the player will be located based on the NPC character, and this is more likely will be used for the optimizations of the system as well, because sometimes we don't need to drive the NPC AI logics if they are far behind or far away from player character, right? Maybe we need to drive their logics only when a specific range of NPC characters based on the player distance. So in such scenarios, we can use this feature, which is the player sense. And again, for the debugging purposes, you can toggle these values and check or debug the NPC characters. Okay. Also, you can tag the characters as well. So for example, for the player instance, I've tagged it as player, and for the NPC instance, I've tagged them as NPCs. Also, in a later release, we are going to plan or we are going to release the team specific NPC logics as well, like maybe set of pedestrian can act as a group, and maybe they can interact with each other, or maybe as a group they can attack to a player. So in order to drive such logics, I have added this feature called team, which means we can categorize our NPCs or even a player based on a specific enumerated value, right? For example, I have added 4 different teams like this, but based on your requirements, you can add whatever you want, right? But again, currently this feature is masked. It will not available for you guys, but in a future release, we will implement these features as well. Okay. Okay, so that's the actor profile system, and then maybe we can go and look at PPC inventory system. Well, this one is a very simple component. Basically, this component will be used to store the inventory specific logics for each characters. For example, if I take NPC blueprint, and inside that inventory system, I have added 5 different static objects for each NPC, such as backpack, briefcase, cup, phone, purse, like that. And based on that, I can simply select what is the inventory item that will be going to used by that specific NPC character, right? For example, if I choose backpack, that NPC character will use backpack. If I choose cup, that NPC character will use cup. Okay, and if I go and see one of these blueprints, maybe BP static item backpack, it will define all the necessary assets and specification of that specific blueprint. So basically you can see we are following sort of a data oriented pattern where you don't need to actually change blueprint logics each time. Instead you can simply tweak these values and get the work done, right? So for example, we have a backpack mesh, static mesh here, and that static mesh will be used to spawn our static item backpack for that specific character, right? Okay, so that's the inventory system. And finally, we can look into the maybe user interface system. And this one is again pretty much simple. Basically, we use PPUC user interface system to drive our UI logics, and this won't be included any of these character specific blueprints because UI is a singleton component that will be aligned with our game base, right? So inside the game base, you can find out a component called Pedestrian AI System HUD, and if you go and see that component here, you can see I have added BPC user interface system as a component directive inside this specific blueprint. So what's the use case of having such a component based hierarchy? Well, basically you don't need to copy and paste or maybe even remove the logics inside this HUD component each time when you migrate this asset, right? You can simply plug and play the component here, and that those features will be available inside this specific HUD, right? So maybe you have a different HUD system, maybe that will drive different sort of logics. So simply you don't need to plug this component, and instead of that you can plug your own logics here, right? And inside this user interface system, basically you can see there are a set of widgets that you can set, such as help widget and notification widgets, and maybe weapon widget, crosshair, things like that. And yeah, mainly I think those are the components or subsystem existing pedestrian AI system. And yeah, so in the next tutorial we'll see how we can use these components to implement our NPC specific logics, and how to build a pedestrian environment, as well as how to use these sort of navigation invokers to make them alive in the level. Okay, so thank you everyone. Have a nice day.